Hello, this is Malorian, this is Orc Tactical Team, and what we're going to be talking about today is actually leading off kind of my last video. So if you did not watch my last video talking about is bigger still better, I suggest you go back to that because for this topic I really needed to cover that last one first to kind of really explain where I'm coming from for this one. So if you haven't seen that, go back. Alright, for those that haven't seen it, let's go. What I'm going to be talking about today is why is Skaven not the top tier dominant army that they used to be. Because when I had to do a little video before where I was talking about just what I thought was the top army right now, or even in a lot of comments from other places, whenever I've had to really make my suggestion on which one I think is the best, the worst, blah, 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 of course you see a lot of people's opinions. Well, what about this? What about that? And something that really comes up a whole bunch is, well, what about Skaven? I thought Skaven was crazy. You know, Skaven are the best, blah, blah, blah. And you know, this is the reason why I think that they're not as crazy as they used to be. So let's go and rewind a little bit. When we were really starting to start off here with 8th edition, you had all the big hordes, right? And that's what I was kind of talking about, where at the beginning, bigger was better. And so with this, if you had that where there wasn't much shooting, not much war machines, just big blocks, right? Well, then all of a sudden that means that their whole army worked very well. You could go and you'd send out your Skaven slaves, and you could tie up the big horde. You would have your flamethrower behind that, shooting onto it, destroying it. You're going and, you know, double casting your Dreaded 13th, maybe with double casters, and just taking these units off. Even if you're up against a Chosen Star, just boom, Dreaded 13th, destroy. It's all about having these big units that would just go out there, tie things up, and destroy them. And even if you weren't going to be doing it that way, or it's kind of like the more lock down and destroy, then you had things like the Hell Pit Abomination, or you had the whole thing like the Plague Monks with the rerolls, and they just go and they slice things up. Well, unfortunately, things have very much changed. I'd say that the number one thing that's changed is just the way that people are running the tournaments in order to try and counter this. So that's where I was already talking about how you're starting to see more terrain in the middle that's breaking things up, more missions that are forcing you to go across the table. And another big part of this too is the way that people are dealing with this. Like I said with the last video, is that people are starting to take a lot more things that are designed to kill characters, be it the death magic, the witch hunter, you know, specific units that are supposed to be going out there just to kill characters. And the big thing about Skaven is that Skaven is just like orcs and goblins. And if they ever lose their general, they're in big trouble. And the big problem with the general that's usually the Grey Seer in the Skaven army is that he's usually fairly easy to be killed. One, because he's just going to be in the back, he doesn't have a lot of armor, you know, he's a pretty low stat type of character as opposed to trying to kill like a Slaughter Master or something like that. But the other thing is that the magic that he's casting is also going to be killing him. So sure, he might be taking a healing potion or something, but hell, by the time you get to him, he's already might have lost a wound or two from either the warpstone tokens or who knows from what, right? So once you get to him, it's going to be pretty easy to kill him once you're there, as opposed or compared to other characters that will have either higher stats or casting magic that doesn't kill them off. So, and that's a big thing, because I mean, once they die, then all of a sudden the rat hordes, the Skaven slaves, they start falling apart because they just can't, okay, great, you're steadfast and a low leadership, you're going to break, and that's going to be about it. The next part I was talking about is how armies were changing to deal with this. And the big thing with the Skaven army is it has some pretty amazing war machines, but they're very easy to be destroyed. Especially the ones I'm talking about, like the flamethrower, like I was just talking about. As devastating as it is, if it just takes a couple of arrow shots, it is done. It is out of here. And that thing is 75 points. It's a lot of points. So when it's back and sitting safe and just doing its thing and just destroying whatever it's touching, fantastic. As soon as it starts getting some shots back, done. And so be it from either some archers or a doom diver or whatever it is, all of a sudden the Skaven player that before this was a big boon and a big plus to his army, this is now holding him back. It's now a liability. And of course the other thing too is that not only is it a liability in points that okay great you shot a couple of archers, now you got yourself 75 points ahead. Well, once that component's gone, the Skaven slaves also start getting worse. Because sure, now they're tying you up, but that's about all they can do, and eventually they're going to die. And so the whole synergy starts falling apart too. That's a big thing you see with the Skaven, is a synergy about how the units are supposed to be working together. The next part you have to be really looking at is the whole idea with their magic. Now, their magic, like I said, their number one thing, that was their key thing that really set them apart from anything else, was the dreaded 13th. Whenever you face Skaven, they're going to 6 dice that spell. 6 dice, boom, I'm taking off 46 your guys. Ha 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 ha, I'm so crazy powerful. However, now you're starting to see a lot more of the meta change, so that's not so much of a big of a deal, right? You're starting to see a lot more ogres now. Ogres play a huge part in the meta, and if a Skaven player ever goes up against ogres, well, dreaded 13th is absolutely useless. Whenever they're going up and facing these, you know, be it Mournfang, which is still from the same army, or Demigryphs, or now the Skull Crushers, whenever these come into play, well, again, those are totally useless. You can't dreaded 13th these things. And so all of a sudden the whole idea of how that's supposed to be just ripping apart the best of the enemy isn't working anymore. And the same thing too, if they're starting to take monsters, we're starting to see more monsters now. Well, those things are just taken apart. The next part of this too is the whole thing about how those units do against other things in the Skaven army. Like I said, one of the best things that they had was the Plague Monks with their whole reroll banner. But the thing that shuts them down is going to be high toughness and high armor. And what are we starting to see a lot more in this meta? High toughness and high armor. You know, you put one of those units up against, I don't know, something that's toughness 3, no armor, yeah, sure, great. It's going to cut these things up. You know, great. Those we'll take a few losses from going up against the sword masters, but bam, going back, we're going to kill tons of those sword masters. Ha 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 ha. Oh shit, you know, I almost swore there. But Mournfang, damn it, now we're getting smashed. We can maybe hopefully do a wound or two, and they're crushing us. Boom, we've lost our frenzy. Now we still can't hurt you. Our banner's gone. We're just going to be crushed and crushed and crushed until we fall through, and now that whole flank fell apart. And so this is a totally different world. Another part too is the whole scenarios. Now that a lot of tournament organizers are forcing you to come across the board, you can't be as defensive. The Skaven army starts falling apart. As well too, I mean, their war machines are very fragile. So I mean, if they're moving up to try and be aggressive, to try and get across the board, which is difficult in an army that, even though is movement 5, they don't have any cavalry or anything. They don't have any of these really fast units. I mean, I guess you could skitter leap something, but that's, I mean, yeah, your options are not there like you see it in some of the other lists. I mean, maybe you could go with gutter runners and jumping up, but these things are really fragile. And like I just said, we're seeing the reemergence of war machines and shooting. So all of a sudden these gutter runners that used to do very well before, they're now falling back too, because they're starting to die. You're also seeing a lot more magic missiles coming back into it. So again, things like gutter runners are going down. And at the same time, like I said, the other way around now, these same units might be designed to go out and kill characters. Well, they also work very well to go and kill these war machines. So something like the Warp Lightning Cannon, once these things get to them, boom, that's a lot of points in the bank. And so, do I say that Skaven suck now? God, no. No, Skaven is still a very solid army. They are just not at that top tier that they used to be at the beginning of what 8th was. Because, like I just said, their little weapon teams are now being shot out from under them. Their leadership is now a bigger trouble when their generals are being killed by all the new character hunters coming out. They're not designed, especially with their dreaded 13th, to be killing things like ogres and all the monsters cav that we're seeing. They're not designed to be going quickly across the table. They're more of a defensive army. And then with all the shooting and stuff you see now, all their other little things like their gutter runners and their warp lightning cannons are falling apart. So that's why I say they're not super at the top. I still say they're very solid, but for all those you who have been asking me over and over again, like, Malorian, what about Skaven, what about Skaven? I just thought I should go and cover this. So like I said, goes back from the change of, you know, is bigger still better? And that's the reason why things are different with Skaven now too. So there you have it, and thanks for watching. Bye.